Welcome everyone to another segment of intellectual brainstorming and academic excellence. My name is David Oni and my YouTube and Facebook channel is David Oni Wiz. You can to these channels, click on the notification and like and also leave a comment on how to serve you better. Today we're going to be looking at something spectacular, something dynamic, something interesting, something mind-blowing, something informative and educative, something that will edify you in terms of your educational development and growth. Today, we're going to be looking at the contending theoretical perspective on global urbanization. This topic promises to be very interesting and very informative and educative. Join us as we explore on the contending theoretical perspective on global urbanization. One of the most significant developments worldwide is the rapid increase in urbanization. This is more so in developing countries where urbanization is proceeding at an alarming rate. Nigeria and other parts of the world is not an exception to this trend. In fact, Nigeria is the most urbanized country in Africa in terms of degree and spread of urbanization. Although urbanization, especially in developed nations, is associated with industrialization and economic development, it has also some certain adverse consequences in developing countries such as Nigeria. In fact, a major implication of the spectacular growth of the cities is that today Nigeria is threatened by serious urban crisis. Based on this, urbanization in Nigeria is closely associated with such problems as urban slums, degraded environment, unemployment, poverty, all of which have emerged as socio-economic issues with potentially important political implications. Studies of urbanization, especially in the peripheral social formation, most often focus on what they call the spatio-demographic level of analysis. In other words, they emphasize on such phenomena as the spatial pattern of urban growth, the evolution of urban hierarchy, variations in the rate of urban in migration, the occupational structure of the cities, and so on. By focusing on this former level of analysis, they have failed to provide an understanding and explanation of the urbanization process, especially in the periphery. Based on this, let us quickly look at the explanation and definition of urbanization. There is no universally agreed upon definition of urban areas. The criteria for defining urban-rural areas tend to differ from one discipline to another, and from one nation to another, and from one culture to another, and even from one period to another. The lack of a generally agreed upon definition of urban area constitutes a serious impediment to cross-country comparison of urbanization trend. When the definitions used by different countries vary, cross-country comparison may be misleading. However, some scholars in various disciplines and some international and national agencies have developed three broad types of definition of city or urbanity. The category 1 is the legal and administrative definitions which derive its existence from a charter granted by authority of government within whose jurisdiction the place is located. The requirement for recognition may be the existence of certain minimum population or other functional threshold requirements. In some cases, however, government simply designated selected places as urban without any requirement. The second category uses minimum population threshold, which may vary from country to country depending on the situation in each country. The third category is functional in nature, and it is based on the attribute of a settlement which, apart from its population, includes such characteristics as its heterogeneity, occupational structure, and the economic base. In some countries, urban places are identified on the basis of political definition, a population threshold, and the fact that over 60% of the population of a place must be engaged in non-agricultural activities. Urbanization can be defined as a progressive concentration of population in urban areas. In other words, it is a process by which a growing number of percentage of the population live in the urban areas. There is a consensus by most authorities that urbanization contains at least four major components. Number one is the territorial identification of urban places. The second is increase or decrease in population in urban places. Then number three is an increase in number of people engaged in non-agricultural occupation stemming from structural changes and economic growth. And the fourth is the existence of a distinctively built environment and organization in cities that encourage way of life that are described as urban and generally differ significantly from the mode of life in rural areas. although the increased access to the media and other means of communication are making this distinction more less relevant. There are two contending perspectives to the study of urbanization: the Western liberal or modernization perspective and the Marxist perspective. Each of these perspectives attempts to provide an explanation for urban growth and the social effect of urbanism. The Western liberal or modernization perspective has been the dominant perspective in most of the previous work on urbanization. Within this framework, urban growth is seen as an inevitable consequence of development. Industrial growth created jobs which drove rural migrants into cities, generate a complex division of labor, and provide the technology necessary for large cities to function. The modernization theory posits a river push, urban pull explanation of urban growth. The most widely accepted of the modernization theory is perhaps the economic growth level of rural-urban wage differentials and labor adjustment. According to this model, increased urbanization or industrialization creates a wage differential through an increased labor demand, thus drawing low-paid rural areas. The growth of the urban labor force results to decline in this wage differential until an equilibrium is reached and rural migration ceases. The modernization of Western liberal perspective is based on particular ideological assumption, and these assumptions lie at the root of many planning documents that are used to address the problem of the cities, especially in developing countries. However, they have failed to account accurately for the causes and problem of urbanization, especially in developing countries. The theoretical inadequacies of the modernization of Western liberal perspective has led to the emergence of the Marxist perspective on urbanization. It accounts that there are political struggles within the cities that accounts for specific urban forms. Of particular interest is the role of land speculators in influencing the type of housing development, transportation system, and residents that are found in a particular area. The class character of city planning was also emphasized by the new urban sociologists who see city planning as concentrating on the mediation of capitalist conflict and the promotion of profit making rather than representing public interest. They contend that any analysis that ignores the political economic realm espouses conservative ideology regarding the causes and salient consequences of urban phenomena. A detailed description of the workings of the peripheral urban political economy is necessary for political understanding of the theory of peripheral urbanization. The incorporation of the third world economies into the world capitalist system in a disadvantaged position is an important stimulant of primary urbanization growth, the concentration of political empires in the periphery. This unequal exchange or dependent status within the international system not only increases the rate of urban primacy, the preeminence of one or two urban areas in country, it also a system of cities generates increasing centralization of activities within cities, the commercialization of agriculture, rural out migration, and disrupt regional pattern of self-sufficiency and interdependency. The implication of this explosion is the emergence of a mass unemployed people. The key problem is that industrial employment does not expand at pace with population and export trade for several reasons. First, it is the inhibition of economic growth by economic dependency. The penetration of foreign capital causes a industrialization of the peripheral economy as the productive infrastructure is reoriented to the raw material needs of the core countries. The deindustrialization of the periphery is worsened as the cheap import from the core drive the manufacture of the indigenous product or producers or what or out of a business. There is also the elimination of labor-intensive national competitor firms and the dominance of the new capital-intensive foreign firms, which employ fewer workers in proportion to the volume of production. It is important to note that ecological segregation and in particular on-service slums that characterize peripheral cities are largely linked to circulation of capital and profit. Speculation in land and housing is a booming business in peripheral cities, particularly among the local upper classes who see it as a profitable avenue of reinvestment. But speculation leads to inflation and thereby making housing in certain parts of the cities unaffordable to the working class who are driven into the growing slum. But why are our cities in crisis? Although there are many answers to this question, some of the reasons are successive government and urban administrators in Nigeria appear to know little about the dynamics of urbanization, about its social impact, about inter and intra-urban system relationship. As a corollary to the above, their ignorance of these dynamics and their significance increase the impact of the horror of crisis that has now developed concerning urbanization. Then lastly, the non-appreciation of the importance of good urban administration or governance by leaders and urban administrators.